A few years ago at a dinner, someone asked me who my best friend was. I answered easily, said his name without thinking, the way you do. And then, while the conversation moved on without me, I did the math. I met him in 1987, so I kept going, quietly. The next name, a job I left 20 years ago. The one after that, a woman I've known since my 30s. Every person I would have called close, I met before a certain year. Nothing new had been added since. Maybe you've noticed this too. I'm Daniel. When I first saw it, I assumed something had gone wrong with me, that I'd gotten worse at this somehow. I don't think that anymore. But it took me a long time to work out what had actually happened, and what I found wasn't what I expected, so I want to walk you through it. Stay with me. Let me start with how friendship actually worked when we were young, because I think almost everyone misremembers this, and the misremembering is where the whole problem starts. When you were 20, you didn't make friends. Not really. Not the way you'd make a decision. You were placed near people, over and over. The same faces in the same rooms at the same hours for months and years at a stretch. A dorm hallway, a first job where you all clocked in at the same time, a neighborhood where everyone's kids were the same age. You didn't select those people. You accumulated them. And closeness happened, the way it does, when the same person keeps turning up. You saw each other on ordinary Tuesdays, not just on planned occasions. You were bored together. You had nothing to do and nowhere to be, and you filled that with each other, hour after unstructured hour, for years. Nobody had to try. That's the whole thing. Nobody had to try. Everything was dry kindling back then. You put two people in the same room enough times, and something caught, all on its own, without either of them doing anything deliberate about it. And here's the trap in that. Because it happened without effort, you learned the wrong lesson. You concluded you were good at making friends. You weren't. You were never tested. The conditions were doing the work, and you thought it was you. So then the conditions go away, and nobody tells you. They don't leave all at once. They leave one at a time, over about 15 years, each one so ordinary that you never mark the day. The shared routine goes first. You stop being in the same building as the same people every day. Jobs change. People move. The automatic repetition that used to put a person in front of you 200 times a year quietly drops to twice. Then the unstructured time goes. And this one is bigger than people give it credit for. Friendship, the deep kind, needs hours with nothing in them. Not scheduled hours, empty ones. The kind where you're both just around and something real gets said sideways because there was room for it. By 40, almost nobody has those. Every hour has a job. Even the good hours are scheduled. And then the last one goes, and it's the one nobody thinks about at all. Your unformed self. At 20, you were still being made. You had opinions, but they were soft. You could be changed by whoever you spent time with, and you knew it, and there was something open about you because of it. That openness is enormously friendly. It lets other people in easily, because there's still room. By a certain age, you're formed. You know what you think. You've got a shape. And a shape, by definition, is a thing that doesn't accommodate every other shape. So when people talk about how hard it is to make friends as an adult, they usually land on the logistics. Everyone's busy. Nobody has time. That's true, and it's the smallest part of it. The bigger part is that three conditions which used to build friendships for you without your involvement all quietly switched off. The kindling's gone, and you're standing there in the middle of your life, wondering why you've forgotten how to make fire, when the truth is, you never made fire once. You just used to live somewhere that caught easily. Now, there's something else that happened in those years, and this one actually is about you. But it isn't a decline. You got careful. There was a man I worked alongside for 6 years. We had lunch most days. Good company. The kind of easy, ordinary closeness you don't examine because there's no reason to. One winter, I told him something I hadn't told anyone. Nothing dramatic, just something true about how things were going at home. And I watched his face do a small thing, not cruel, just uncomfortable. He was kind about it, changed the subject the way you'd move a chair out of a doorway, and we never went back there again. We stayed friendly for 4 more years, never once got past the weather. I don't hold it against him. He wasn't built for that, and I'd handed it to him without asking. But I noticed. And something in me filed it away, and I don't think I ever offered anything that plainly to anyone again without checking the ground first. That's how it happens. Not a betrayal, just a small door closing quietly, and you learning where the doors are. Nobody comes through 30 years of that without adjusting. And the adjustment is that you got slower to open, not closed. Slower. You watch a little longer before you offer anything. You've learned that not everyone who's friendly is safe, and that knowing someone's name for 6 months isn't the same as knowing them. And the other thing that happened, the one that gets called cynicism when it's actually something else, is that you got better company for yourself. At 20, being alone was intolerable, so almost any company beat it. That's a huge part of why young friendship is so easy. The bar is on the floor, because the alternative is worse. Later on, you know your own company well. You know what a good evening alone feels like. And that means mediocre company genuinely doesn't tempt you anymore. Someone has to be actually worth the time because you have a real alternative now, and you like it. So the bar went up, quite a lot, and a higher bar means fewer people clear it, which looks from the inside exactly like failing at something. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. And this is the part I think people feel most and say least. Adult friendship requires deliberate effort, and deliberate effort feels like admitting need. Think about what actually has to happen now for 2 adults to become close. Somebody has to notice they liked talking to someone, and then that person has to do something about it, reach out, propose a time, follow up when the first attempt goes nowhere, on purpose, repeatedly, with no dorm hallway and no shift schedule doing any of the work, and that's the part that stops people. Because reaching out on purpose says something. It says, I would like more of you. And a lot of us, by a certain age, would rather not say that out loud to somebody who might not say it back. At 20, you never had to. Proximity meant nobody was ever making a request. You just kept turning up in the same places, and it looked like nothing. Now, every step toward a new friendship is visible. It's a small, exposed act, and it can be declined, usually not rudely, usually just by a warm reply that never quite becomes a plan. So here's what I've watched happen, over and over. 2 people meet in their 40s, get along genuinely well, both go home thinking that was good. I'd like to know that person better, and neither one does anything about it. Not out of indifference, out of the same quiet fear. Both of them waiting for the other to make the exposed move, because making it first feels like needing something. And the friendship that both of them wanted simply doesn't happen. Nobody's fault. Nobody even knows. And underneath all of this, there's a grief I think most people carry without ever putting words to it. At some point, it occurs to you that some of your closest friendships may already be behind you, not gone necessarily, but the era that produced them is over. The conditions that made a person become part of your life without either of you deciding. Those years are finished, and you were in them without knowing they were the years. Nobody tells you when you're in that time that you're in it. You're 23, wasting an entire Saturday with people you'll still be thinking about at 58, and you have absolutely no idea that this is the workshop, that this is when it's being built. And then you look up decades later and understand that the deepest friendships of your life were formed in a window that is closed. That the people who know your whole story are the people who were standing next to you in a specific handful of years, and that nobody knew will ever have been there. That's a real loss. I'm not going to soften it. When people ask why it's harder to make friends now, that's usually the thing sitting underneath the question, and it doesn't have a solution. But here's what I've come to think about it, and it changed how the whole thing sits in me. You did not get worse at friendship. You became someone specific. Every single thing that makes it harder now is a thing you'd call growth in any other part of your life. You're slower to open. That's discernment. You'd rather be alone than in poor company. That's self-knowledge that took you 30 years to earn. None of that is deterioration. It's the accumulated result of becoming a person. It's just that the same qualities that make you good at the rest of your life happen to make you a slower friend. And there's one more thing worth saying, though it doesn't cancel the loss. The friendships you make now can't be manufactured. The kindling isn't there anymore. So anything that catches at this age caught for a real reason. Two formed people, both with somewhere else to be, both with a high bar, chose each other on purpose. That never happened when you were 20. Not once. It didn't need to. So the new ones are rare. And rare is exactly what they should be, given who you turned into. For a long time, I thought the empty years meant I'd lost something. Now I think it just means I stopped being handed people and started having to mean it. I won't pretend that's a trade I'd have chosen. It's harder. It stays harder. That part is simply true, and I'd rather say so than tell you it gets easy. But it stopped feeling like evidence against me. And that turned out to be most of what I needed. I'll leave you with this. You didn't lose the ability. You lost the conditions. Those aren't the same thing, and one of them was never yours to begin with. The empty years on your list aren't a verdict on who you are. They're just the sound of a room that stopped filling itself. Tell me in the comments, has it gotten harder for you too? Do you look at the people closest to you and find you met all of them a long time ago? I'd like to know. And if you want to sit with me again, subscribe. I'll be here. I'm Daniel. I'll see you in the late hours.